It is upside down. Rosa stared at it. The ducks in the picture had their feet up in the air. Oh, come on, you couldn't notice even though their feet were up in the air? That's not how ducks fly in normal reality. I know you've led a sheltered life, but it's no excuse. Rosa squirmed, feeling the heat on her cheeks. She couldn't think of anything more embarrassing. I'm sorry. Glem's face lost its cheer. Why do you need my forgiveness for? Is he one of these people who goes, what are you saying sorry for? All the time? That's me. Rosa looked up at Guillem. His eyes lacked the gentle glint they usually had. It was a subtle change, something felt rather than observed. She thought he would reprimand her further. His face certainly looked like it. Reprimand? You don't know what reprimand means, do you? You said sorry. He said, why are you saying sorry? Instead, he sat down beside Rosa, drumming his fingers on his cheek while he watched her wordlessly. Well? Aren't you going to read? What was wrong with him today? He didn't seem like himself. Had he eaten something bad? The aura he exuded was not his usual friendly warmth. I swear, if this is fucking demons, I'm going to cry. Flat out, I'm just going to straight up cry. Yet, it wasn't particularly wicked. Okay, so it's not demons. The look on his face just read slightly and eternally miffed. Miffed. That's not a word they use in France. There's this wonderful moment in Angel of Darkness, Tomb Raider, where someone in Paris in a French accent says, oh, you have to be careful of all of these sickos. It's like, sicko? Really? Paris? Are you sure? Rosa turned the book upright and read the words out loud. Once you, that is the U with the short sound is pronounced like this. Guillem made the sound, his face still in his lazy stare. Rosa nodded and continued. Her nerves were frazzled, but she was actually at ease in his presence. She felt like a child being taught by their parent. The parent was strict, but still caring. Caring? Really? And the child was jumpy, but eager to learn and please. Most of all, he would not hurt her for her mistakes. Rosa was almost sure. Der lebed. Lived. The past tense of live. Oh, thank you, Mr. Saki. Libed. This is English, damn you. It's not French. Hang on. Do the French do that thing where the V is pronounced as a B? God, I shouldn't be admitting how little I know about French. Why do we change it? It is a rule of grammar that... Grammar? Guillem narrowed his eyes at her. Do you even know your alphabet? Rosa shook her head. You should start there. Guillem rose from his chair and disappeared amongst the shelves. He left behind an old thick book covered in green felt. This was what he had been writing in earlier. It looked tattered and worn. The pages laid fat on its side so that the book didn't close properly. Rosa reached to peek at the cover when... Stop, you may not look in the book? Yeah, I thought as much. Come on. Why would you ever be allowed to touch that? You are not to touch that. Rosa's whole body froze at the sound of Guillem's warning. Was a quick thing. Do you like the new lighting we have here? There's a very, very bright light there. I'm scared because now you can see how bad my hair is. It's terrible. It's getting to the point where you can actually notice it's naturally curly and a lot needs to go into it for it to be straight. Guillem's stare followed her even as she whispered numerous apologies under her breath. I'm sorry. Guillem just rolled his eyes. You're always seeking forgiveness for everything. Am I? I'm so... Oh, come on. You could not be more of a cliché, Rosa, damn you. His hand struck the table in front of Rosa. Bit angry? Rather you didn't, mate. In the quiet library, the sound rang uncomfortably in her ear. When she looked up, Guillem's face was looming severely above hers. He moved closer to her, his eyes fixed on her intensely. Rosa's mouth hung open. She struggled to say something, but her wits were like the burning ends of a matchstick. Ends? You don't dual-wield a matchstick. There's no such thing as a Darth Maul matchstick. It just has one end. Having both ends, that's just a surefire way to burn your fingers. What is it? The French? Only the French would invent something like that. Before she could compose herself, she felt Guillem's hand lift her chin. Rosa's heart thumped loudly inside her chest. Please don't. Not you too. She felt his breath on her face, and her heart sank into despair. Mother's voice resounded in her head. In the end, they're all the same. He is like everyone else. She shut her eye and prepared for the worst, like she always did when... Then she felt her face being turned from side to side. She opened her eye to see Guillem studying her face like a textbook. You're a fairly attractive girl. It's a very flat way of putting it, but thank you. Why do you carry yourself as if it is a slight? He lifted the hair that hid her damaged eye. Rosa clenched her teeth. Is it because you were hurt before? How do I admit that I did that? I won't! Good idea, me! He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was stating that the sky was blue. I thought that must have meant staring, but apparently not. Rosa recoiled from his touch. No, I did that to myself. I wasn't talking about your eye. He placed a book on the table. It was a thin pamphlet filled with letters. There were lines on the book that instructed the user to trace letters with their quill. Rosa wanted to focus on it, but she could feel the truth in the Marx's words stinging her. It was the way you went limp when I touched you. Next time, I advise you to fight back. If you don't want to be touched, then you don't have to be. Do you understand this? But I am weak, says who? His eyes were humourless. The world cares not for people who think of themselves as victims, Rosa. If you need power, then be powerful. Is this like the advice of if you want to be confident, just pretend? You'll get it eventually. To have it, it is necessary to crush things along the way. Fucking hell. I think he's going a bit evil on us. Rosa flinched under the weight of his stare. She realised that the polite and courteous Guillem was but a facet. It was still him, but it was nothing but an oil portrait, an artwork of his devising. Synthetic, aloof, and irrelevant, it couldn't capture his essence in a few human strokes. It's the French, man. All they do, they just want to sleep with people, and they get bored with you, and then you actually realise they don't have much of a personality. It's the French. It's not my fault they all sleep with each other's wives. Jesus, don't blame me. That's not true. Suddenly Rosa realised he was powerful. Who are you? She caught herself before saying it out loud. You are not Guillem. And yet, he spoke to her as if he knew what it was like to hurt and to fear. If you don't start acting like you own yourself, then people will not hesitate to take everything. He laid out the rest of the books he had brought out. One was an activity book for children. It had a picture of a child holding an apple with an arrow stuck on it. Another was a book of limericks. Jesus Christ, we're stepping up rather fast. The other two were thicker books that intimidated her. Gee, Hamlet? This guy is not a good teacher. Hamlet. Okay, so here you are. Read the alphabet. Here's a children's book. Here's Hamlet. It's not exactly an easy fucking read, is it? Do they even have Shakespeare in France? He's English. I can't think he's part of the curriculum. Oh well, I guess in a library such as big as this. Oh, I just realised none of these books have names on them. Then you know, squiggles on them. How dull. Some of them could just be mistaken for DVDs. If electricity was invented, I'd totally do that. This here, that's definitely like the Friends box set or something. Anyway, she would come to Hamlet in Paradise Lost. But the one that caught her eye was an ornately designed book. It had a beautiful red jacket with delicate gold trimmings lining the corners. The gods and the goddesses of Roman mythology. Don't take it easy, do you? This would be her favourite book, her treasure, and she knew it like love at first sight. These books are yours. Take them with you. Read the thin ones first, and then gradually build your vocabulary with the thicker ones. Is there nothing in between? Is there absolutely nothing in between? It has to go alphabet, children's book, Hamlet. Like, Christ. Rosa ran her head over the skin of the red book. She opened the cover gingerly as if carefully unwrapping a present. Thank you. No thanks needed. I simply showed you some books from a portion of the library you're unaware of. You are still so generous even if you are like this. Like what? That. What? Somewhat irritable? Braver woman than I. I wouldn't have said that. Guillem didn't reply, leaving an awkward silence lingering between them. Then he gave a giant laugh that made Rosa jump out of her skin. I do look damn irritable, don't I? Why? Is it because of Emelie? Guillem's eyes drifted away. No, I've always been. You just pointed it out. But you are not usually like this. especially with Catherine and the townspeople. I find it easy to adapt to people, especially to the ones I like. Gilem looked at Rosa as if he had just become aware of her presence. Hang on a minute. So does that mean you used to like me but don't now? Bastard. Makes me wonder why I'm so stern with you. I'm sorry. Rosa shook her head. I somehow preferred this side of you. Gilem cocked his head to the side. He brought out the green book that Rosa noticed earlier. This is called a journal. When you learn to write, start one. What is it? Something you can use to remember yourself when you've forgotten. Does it work? It used to. Nowadays, not anymore. Oh. The act itself is the only thing I remember. Now, let me start with your vowels. Intercourse has either just gone terribly, terribly wrong, or someone's having a nightmare. A scream pierced the halls of the chateau. It was Catherine. Gilem sprinted to the door with Rosa not too far behind. That's a bad noise to hear. The fuck was that? Back in the piano room, Catherine took a shaky step towards her sister. She wasn't moving at all. Blood dotted the ivory keys. It was an accident. Emelie? She was overcome with the urge to approach her sister and shake her awake, make sure she was okay, but it was a nasty fall. Emelie? Catherine saw the way her sister's head snapped back as it collided with the sharp corner of the piano. Oh, I want to hold my neck again. Oh no. I want to hold my neck and just pretend that didn't happen. She watched it like a series of photographs in her head. She had to check on her, but her feet refused to move. Instead, she began to retreat to a corner. She didn't even notice her legs were moving until her forehead touched the wall. She didn't want to turn around. Her sister was on the floor. Her eyes were still open, unblinking. It was an accident. It was nothing but an accident. Was it? She pushed first. She got really scary. She strangled me. What? That's absurd. Are you sure? Would she do that? I don't know. I think she did. Catherine touched her throat. It felt fine. That Paride girl. Emelie, is it? She really believes just because the Marquis took her in that he's interested in her. Well, she's obsessed with the master. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Wasn't her mother a bit, not right in the head? It probably runs in the family. Emelie had looked mad. Her eyes had burned with malice for her as she had closed her fingers around Catherine's neck, but she couldn't remember if that really happened. Sister was always kind to her. She would never ever hurt her, even when they got into fights. Sister loved her. Am I turning mad? I have the blood of a mad woman. Am I going to end up like her? I only told her the truth. Gilem doesn't care for her, and she doesn't even care for him that much either. It was just chaff, their relationship. No sense trying to make everyone else miserable too. She called me a jealous and a cunt. She's never called me a cunt. She said they've decided to send me away, my lessons sent home, the piano replaced. It was for my own good, she said. I don't have to travel here all the time. I can concentrate on my other endeavours. I can make new friends. But I know she just doesn't want me near the Chateau of Gilem. She hates it when I catch her with him. Perhaps this morning was the last straw. She hates it, but she also smirks at me when I see them, like she basks in it. I think I might hate her. Catherine's thoughts ran through her head like a storm. They poured out of her aimlessly. I wonder if the piano is broken. Am I going to pay for it? That's a cold thought to have. Someone's just died. That should not be a thought you're having. What will become of us without Sister's wages? What of Father's medicine? What of my dreams? Sister can't be dead. Sister can't be dead? Catherine brought her fingers to her lips and nibbled on her thumb. She didn't notice this. Her mind was preoccupied. She was in her corner of the wall, biting her fingers, and was a tiny comfort in a rapidly collapsing world. Gilem opened the door and found Emelie lying on the floor. An ugly gash broke the skin of her forehead. Facing the wall was Catherine, shivering like a leaf and viciously devouring one of her fingernails. He approached her cautiously. Catherine? Rosa was out of breath, but was still able to let out a gasp at the scene. Emelie's lifeless eyes stared up at nothing while Catherine pressed herself into a corner. What had happened after she had left? Rosa, will you call for help, please? See that someone checks on Emelie. Rosa did as she was told, but what she really wanted to do was hug Catherine herself. Guillaume took a small step towards her. He called out her name slowly, coaxingly. Catherine turned her head, her thumb still on her lower lip. The flesh was torn, and a smudge of scarlet painted her teeth. It was an accident, I swear. Of course it was, Catherine, of course it was. She pushed me first. She wanted me sent away. She wanted me gone. You can tell me about it later. Let me take you away from this room. You staying here is not a good idea. Just leave. Well, what have I done? Catherine fell to her knees and wept. Large sobs sucked the air out of her. She felt like drowning, trying to keep herself afloat in between sobs. Every exhale was a squeezing pain in her lungs. She felt Guillaume's arms wrap around her. What have I done? What have I done? You didn't do anything, ma chérie. This is not your fault. There was a bitter bulge building up in her throat, but she felt that no amount of crying could push it back down. What am I going to do? Father is... Sister... I'm so scared. Guillaume's arms wound tighter around her, and she clutched onto his warmth in this vast sea of fear. You don't have to be. I will always be by your side. Catherine, I will take care of you and your father, all right? You don't have to worry about your future. Her tears soaked his shirt through, but the squeezing in her chest felt less painful. Why do you do this? Why do you care so much for me? Guillaume's brows furrowed as if confused that she even asked. I just do. It was a boldly stated fact, as if painfully obvious, as if Catherine was a fool for not knowing it. It made Catherine's heart expand in her ribs. When she looked back, she would recall this as the moment she fell in love with him. The look in his eyes was reassuring and strong. She wasn't alone. She was going to be all right. Let's get you away from here. He supported her arms and stood her up, careful to block the view of her sister from her eyes. He led her to the door. Catherine hated how fast her relief came. She was still drenched in sorrow at her sister's death. Her father would not take well to the news, especially in his health. But she was all right, and she hated it. Rosa was with her. She didn't have to leave her piano. Her dreams, him. Nothing had to change. And most importantly, she hated the voice that came whispering in her head over and over again. Thank goodness she's dead. Thank goodness. You have problems. You are aware of this, right, Catherine? That means you have issues. The first candle is lit. This candle is storage. The love for familiars, the cleansest love. The cleansest, the cleanest. Rosa stared at the blue candle glowing in her hand as she chanted her spell. Trust is the veil that conceals and deceives. Trick his eyes and his heart with the warmth from the candle's flame. A bond of blood like kin will be forged. Weave this trust so his tongue will yield to what is sought. Are we doing magic again? That's a bad idea. Rosa stood by Catherine's tomb, nursing memories of her. Christ. Air hostesses existed back here, huh? The soft wind lightly blew her hair. It reminded her of Catherine and her playful ways. Tears sprouted from her eyes. Even the wind. Console her, scold her. We're not evil. Console. I am always here, my love. Loss will always hurt. But you love Mother the best, don't you? Yes, Mother. Then you are going to be fine. I will never leave you like Catherine did. Oh, like she had a fucking choice. Rosa. Guillaume's soft voice came from behind. Rosa glanced at him in acknowledgement. He stood quietly beside her for a few moments, but ventured to speak. Have you thought about my offer? My house is always open for you, remember that? I'm sorry for my outburst back then. It's nothing. The wind played around the feet, and Rosa pictured Catherine as part of the breeze, playful and free. She was free from the pain and confusion that had plagued her in her last days. They stood beside each other in solemn reverence. Finally, Rosa broke the silence. She was my family. Man. I really like this. This is awesome. I was in pain before she came along. I didn't know any better. She gave me hope. She was bright like a flame. When I close my eyes, I can still see the imprint of her light in the darkness. I can feel warmth. A star. Oh, now Guillaume's trying to get on the act. We all know it was partially our fault. You can't get out of this.